Welcome to another video, everyone. We are going to be doing a deeper look at blueprints. Blueprints are something relatively new, and so I've been doing some experimenting. As you can see, plenty of explosions all on the ground from it. And I'm just going to give you guys some of my top blueprints that I've come up with so far, and you guys can determine whether or not you want to use them. We're going to be starting with the Armada faction. This is one that I found was really helpful for just creating a decent wind farm. And I'm going to also go into a little bit deeper explanation on how to properly build blueprints, because they can be a little bit tricky. You can end up having your constructors walking all over the place if you try to place them, and that can be a little bit buggy. So what I figured out was you need to select every single building you want built first in order to make sure that you don't end up bugging out and having your guy traveling long distances. So you can see here there's a little bit of travel, but it's not too excessive, you know. It's just up and down. And how I did this was by selecting one group of windmills at a time. And we built the con first. That's something, if you are trying to build a lot of things, you definitely want to make sure you get the construction turret down first, because that will give you the best possible build power. And then you also want to make sure that the things you're building are within the radius of that build tower, just to help boost the speed of it. So how you would want to create this blueprint is first place down your con, keep that selected, then you would select one group of windmills and then just go through and select all the group of windmills. And once you have all of them selected, one row at a time, then you would hit save blueprint. Now what you do not want to do is you do not want to select your con and then select all of your blueprints, or all of your windmills, because if you do such a massive pile, I'll show you what happens here. You press save blueprint, and then we tell these guys to build this new blueprint, number 6. And you can see the pattern they build is very back and forth. They're going to be traveling constantly from one side to the other side to the other side, back and forth, and it's a very slow build pattern. So you do not want to select all of your windmills all at once, whereas if you select them line by line, the pattern will be a little bit better here. When you click it, it goes straight down one side, straight down one side, straight down one side, straight down one side, and that's much easier for your constructors to actually build. So that's one blueprint pattern that I came up, so you can copy that design if you want. You could also do a similar design with one construction turret here, and then doing maybe your windmills spread out. I know some people prefer to build their windmills like this, so if that's what you prefer, you could do it kind of like this, and then just have all of your windmills inside the zone. And that would also be a great blueprint pattern. And then when you're selecting when you're actually trying to put it into a blueprint build, what you're going to want to do is select your con turret first, then you could go through and select each row, and then just make sure you're selecting each row all the way through your entire build, and that would also work as a blueprint. So those are some good options for wind farms. Just having that extra con turret can make those windmills build much faster. So be sure to make sure you put those con turrets in your builds, and that will help a lot. Now another thing that I've been refining is your defensive blueprints, and I think these are probably not being used that frequently from what I've seen, but you can have a very good structure of a defensive blueprint where it's just click and go. And that's the nice thing about blueprints, is once you have it set up properly, you can just click and then go do something else. How long would it take me to set this up if I did everything manually? Probably a bit longer. You know, it would take me a couple minutes to go in and get everything done, but with the blueprint you can just place and go. So I'm going to show you a couple more that I came up with as good defensive blueprints you can choose. And the order in which you build everything is, once again, very important. So we have here, we start with a con turret, and this is going to just get us the build power we need, right? Then we have we have actually the radar jammer and the radar tower that we're going to build first, and that's just going to make it so the building is cloaked and there's no line of sight. And then the radar jammer is just going to give everything perfect vision. Then we have the overwatch tower. And keep in mind that if you have watched my other blueprint video, then you'll be very familiar with this pattern. And basically the only change I did was extend the wall here. And we put in one Dragon Claw. The Dragon Claw has pretty good DPS. You can see 158. So once they come into range of the Dragon Claw, they are also in the range of the Overwatch Tower. So we'll be doubling up our damage. And the Dragon Claw can take a couple more hits because it's behind a wall. You could even add another layer of wall here, and that might be better, because then you have to fight through even more to get to the Dragon's Claw. So yeah, I think this has a great potential for just being a good, like, heavy structure that's pretty tough to push into. Now this one is a bit more aggressive and much more metal dense. Let's see how much actually this takes in metal. This is 2,200 metal cost just in this blueprint itself. And this is what I would say is a pretty good gauntlet blueprint. So we have the con turret going up. Then we're going to be doing our utilities with the radar and the radar jammer, just so our buildings are not visible by radar signature when we're putting them up. And then we're going for the beamer turrets. Now, the reason why we're doing this is because gauntlets can be pushed very easily while they're being built. And so you want a little bit of extra defense to just hold off anything that might come towards you. And beamer turrets are pretty cheap. They're only like 200 and they do a decent amount of damage, right? And then we would go for the gauntlet after that, since we have the support that we need to defend it. Okay, so that's all for T1 blueprints that I've created so far. We're gonna go on to T2 blueprints, and these are a little bit more unique, I would say. Something that maybe you guys haven't thought about using. Let's go ahead and pull up some. We've got the spread out economy blueprint. So this is for if you're a frontliner, I would say, more frequently, and you're worried that some of your economy might get rolled, or one of your towers, you're like in a little bit of a sketchy situation. You want to continue to eco scale, but you also want to be careful not to like create a explosion that will blow up your entire base. So you would spread out your economy a little bit more in a situation like that, so that you don't end up taking massive damage, and potentially your team would be able to come help you before all of your fusions are gone, right? So we're starting with all of our build power. That's always what you want to do. Start with building all of your build power first. And then we will go into our first fusion, which the first fusion should be centered, because when you have all of your build power placed, it is within range of almost all of your build turrets. Okay, so you have maximum potential of production on your first fusion tower, so that can be really helpful to get it up much quicker. And then from there, you're going to go into your advanced fusion, or your advanced energy converter. So you go fusion, energy converter, fusion, energy converter, fusion, energy converter, and then you just do that in a big line. Now the question is, what happens if you are attacked here? Okay, if someone comes at your base and destroys one of your things, how much stuff dies? Obviously, self-destruct is a little bit more explosive, but you can see it doesn't kill your second fusion. So you would only die one fusion at a time, right? And so as things are exploding, you are still okay. You know, obviously it's bad to lose the economy, but this is replaceable, right? This is not all of it at once. So that's the main thing. And you could also do a variation of this with maybe a a cloaked fusion, so that could be pretty cool as well. Boo. Okay, let's see here. Next we need to get our bots out because we are kind of like we killed them all. So here's our next one. We are going to be placing, and that is the standard Aphis build. Now this, you don't necessarily have to do it like this. You could definitely do your blueprint so that it's more concise and like not quite as singled out, but this might help a little bit with explosions as well. And that is to just do like walled structures in between everything. I don't think it'll matter if your Aphis explodes because Aphises go much bigger booms, but the walls could help slightly there. It just kind of depends. We're gonna get one more guy, one more T2 to help build this one. Let's see here. Now walls are very tricky, so when you're placing your blueprints, you have to be very careful when you're placing walls, because though if you aren't careful, your walls can end up blocking your units and trapping them like this. And that has happened to me on occasion. I'm surprised it happened this time because I thought I planned it so that it wouldn't happen. Anyway, if that becomes an issue, you could definitely make the blueprint so there is no way for it to be trapped. Maybe fill in this area with walls or something so that it can't be trapped. But unfortunately, sometimes these guys are a little bit dorky and trap themselves. Such as this. Ah, man. Okay. I guess this is a kind of a little bit of a rough example. Anyway, so to avoid getting trapped, what you're going to want to try to do is not build the lower section first. You would want to build the walls up here first so that your con ends up moving around and out of the hole here and doesn't end up getting stuck. So that's a slight change that you can do on your blueprint, and I probably will end up doing as well, because obviously this is kind of a little bit annoying, but this could protect a little bit against explosions. Probably not a Aphis explosion, but you know, yeah, obviously that's so big, especially if you self-destruct, it's not gonna be saving much of anything. Anyway guys, let's move on to Cortex. And now we have Cortex here. Okay, so we've come up with a couple variations for Cortex, similar style. And that's the thing that's a little bit annoying about blueprints, is the fact that you have to have separate prints for both factions. And once they end up adding Legion, it's going to be the same thing for Legion, where you have to have another set of blueprints for Legion. And so this is something that I think the developers need to figure out, is a way to make it just one set of blueprints that takes the same style of buildings and makes it universal between factions. That would be very helpful. I just don't know how complicated it would be to do. But anyway, the second set of blueprints we have is a standard wind. Where is it at here? There we go. Standard wind build, similar to what you would have for Armada. Same concept here, and just being careful to select only one line of windmills at a time to build, otherwise your windmills will end up, or otherwise your constructor will end up walking back and forth and back and forth. So you want to be very careful on how you select things. Then we also have the Aphis build, which this one I roughed out a lot better so you wouldn't get stuck with it. Your constructor won't get stuck. The walls are much tighter. Basically, to avoid your constructor getting stuck, you're just going to want to make sure the walls are as close to all of the buildings as possible, and then your constructor won't be able to get stuck in between there as easily. It could still happen, but it's much less likely to happen. And then we also have another build here that, let's see, we'll grab just a couple of these guys, and this one is going to be a lot more of a wide build. This is more if you're just trying to avoid all of your stuff exploding. This is how far apart it would probably have to be to, I mean, this isn't optimal, but this will work. And if one Aphis explodes, it won't kill the other Aphis. That's kind of the goal I had here. So that's about the distance you'd want. You could try to even go further than that, but you're using up a lot of space. So the main thing is once one Aphis explodes, it will probably kill all of this and all of this, but your Aphis here will still stay alive in that situation. So not optimal, obviously, because stuff still dies, but at the same time, you still have an Aphis to work with, and you know, it's a pretty good block. Pretty good chunk. So take a look at those as a potential. And then we also have T2 defensive here as well, which is just a similar pattern, same style as Armada, just with Cortex buildings. And then also the same with the Gauntlet version, or the Aggravator version. Or Agitator, sorry. Aggravator is a different building. So yeah, those are some blueprints you could try. Just make sure, like I said, the biggest thing is make sure that you have the buildings selected in the proper order you want them built. If you don't select them very carefully, then your constructor will spread out and try to do it in a random pattern, and it'll just make everything completely trash. So see if those, if you end up liking them, tweak them, leave a comment down below and let me know what you guys might like for different build patterns you would like to see with blueprints, or something that maybe you've come up with that might be a little bit better. And yeah, just let other people know in the comments. Also, if you got value out of this video, definitely subscribe and check out the channel. We got a lot of other tips and tricks for Beyond All Reason. So we will see you guys on the battlefield.